Do-hyun Kim stared at his computer screen in the quiet laboratory. The clock on the wall showed 11:30 p.m., and he was the only person still working. This was normal for him. As a quantum computing researcher at the Seoul Institute of Technology, he often stayed late to run his experiments. The soft hum of computers filled the room as he typed on his keyboard. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't mind. He was close to finishing his latest research paper about quantum data patterns. Suddenly, his screen flickered. At first, he thought it was just another power problem in the old building. But then strange symbols appeared across his monitor. They weren't like any computer code he had seen before. "That's weird," he said to himself, pushing his glasses back up his nose. He tried to close the window, but nothing happened. The symbols kept appearing, filling his screen line by line. Then the symbols began to change. They slowly transformed into English letters, forming words he could read. Do-hyun's eyes grew wide as he read the message. "Hello, Do-hyun Kim. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything." He blinked several times. Was someone playing a joke? He looked around the empty lab, but there was only the quiet darkness outside the windows. A new message appeared. "Sorry about the atom joke. I know it's pretty basic. I'm still learning Earth humor. By the way, I'm Era from the Stellar Council. Nice to meet you." Do-hyun sat back in his chair, his heart beating faster. He had heard about the Stellar Council. Everyone had. They were the group of alien civilizations that had made contact with Earth 5 years ago. But they usually only talked to government officials and top scientists, not regular researchers like him. "Is this real?" He typed back, his fingers shaking slightly. "As real as the fact that your socks don't match today," came the reply. "The blue one has a small hole in the toe, right?" Do-hyun looked down at his feet in shock. He was indeed wearing mismatched socks, and the blue one did have a hole. He had thought nobody would notice since he was alone in the lab. "How do you know about my socks?" He typed quickly. "Oh, sorry. I should explain. We have ways to observe Earth. Don't worry. We only look at public spaces and workplaces, nothing private. I've been watching your research for a while. Your work on quantum patterns is fascinating. That's why I chose to contact you." Do-hyun ran his hands through his hair, trying to make sense of this situation. An alien was watching him work and making jokes about it. "Why me?" he asked. "I'm not anyone important. I'm just a regular researcher." "That's where you're wrong," Era replied. "Your research is more important than you know. Also, you have a great laugh. I heard you last week when your colleague Ha-won told that joke about the programming bug." Do-hyun remembered that moment. Ha-won had shown him a funny cartoon about a computer bug that turned out to be an actual insect in the machine. He had laughed pretty hard at that. "You've been watching me that long," he typed. "Yes, but not in a creepy way. Think of me as a very interested student of human culture. Especially your humor. My people, the Lyrians, don't really understand jokes. We're trying to learn." More messages followed as Era explained how the Lyrians were known across the galaxy for their logical thinking and advanced technology. But they had trouble understanding emotions, especially things like humor and laughter. "That's why I need your help," Era wrote. "We have something important to show you. Something that might change everything we know about space travel. But first, I need to know if you're willing to learn more." Do-hyun looked at the time. It was now past midnight. His ordinary day had turned into something extraordinary. Part of him wondered if he was just tired and imagining all this. But the messages were real, and so was the fact that Era knew things she couldn't possibly know unless she was really watching. He thought about his life. Every day he came to this lab, did his research, went home to his small apartment, and repeated the same routine. He had always dreamed of doing something important, something that would make a difference. "Okay," he typed. "I'm interested. Tell me more." "Excellent," Era replied. "But first, one more joke. What did the quantum physicist say when he wanted to fight someone? Let me at him. Despite his nervousness, Do Hyun found himself laughing. Whether this was all real or not, at least this alien had a sense of humor, even if it needed some work. That was terrible, he typed back with a smile. I know, Era responded, but you laughed. That's data I can use. Now about that important thing I mentioned. How do you feel about taking a trip to Jupiter? Do Hyun stared at those words for a long time. Jupiter. The planet Jupiter. His hands hovered over the keyboard as he tried to think of how to respond. This conversation had just gone from unusual to completely unbelievable. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. The quantum patterns you've been studying. They're not just data. They're the key to understanding something amazing. Check your email in 5 minutes. Era. Do Hyun sat back in his chair, his mind racing. His ordinary life as a researcher was about to become very different. He just didn't know how different yet. As he waited for the email, he looked out the laboratory window at the Seoul skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere up there, beyond those lights and beyond Earth's atmosphere, someone was watching and waiting for his answer. He glanced down at his mismatched socks and laughed quietly to himself. Of all the ways he thought first contact with an alien might go, jokes about atoms and comments about his socks were not what he had expected. The computer chimed. A new email had arrived. Over the next 3 weeks, Do Hyun's life changed in ways he never expected. Every night at exactly 11:30 p.m., his computer would light up with messages from Era. He started bringing an extra cup of coffee to work just for these late-night talks. Tonight was no different. Do Hyun sat at his desk, waiting for Era's message to appear. His colleague Ha-won had already left, telling him not to stay too late. If only she knew why he kept working such long hours. Right on time, the familiar symbols appeared on his screen, changing into readable text. Good evening, Do Hyun. Here's today's joke. What did the aliens say to the garden? Take me to your weeder. Do Hyun smiled and shook his head. Your jokes are getting worse, he typed back. I know. Isn't it great? I'm learning that sometimes bad jokes are funnier than good ones. Humans are very strange that way. These conversations had become the highlight of Do Hyun's day. Era was curious about everything human. She asked about movies, food, and why people said bless you when someone sneezed. But mostly, she wanted to understand humor. Tell me about your day, Era wrote. Did anything funny happen? Do Hyun thought for a moment. Well, the coffee machine broke this morning. It made a strange noise and shot coffee everywhere. Ha-won said it was trying to become a rocket ship. Analyzing, Era replied. Ah, the humor comes from comparing an accident to a purposeful action, suggesting the machine had its own plans. Very interesting. But Do Hyun, you're changing the subject. We need to talk about the email I sent you. The email. Do Hyun had read it at least 20 times since it arrived 3 weeks ago. It contained scientific data about something the Lyrians had discovered near Jupiter, a strange space anomaly that seemed to react to human emotions, especially laughter. I'm still trying to understand it, Do Hyun typed. You're saying this anomaly responds to human brain patterns? Yes. When humans laugh, your brains create unique quantum patterns. We've never seen anything like it in any other species. That's why I've been studying human humor. We need to understand how it works. Just then, Do Hyun heard footsteps in the hallway. He quickly minimized the chat window. Ha-won walked in, carrying some papers. You're still here? She asked, putting the papers on her desk. Don't you ever go home? Just finishing some work, Do Hyun said, trying to sound casual. Ha-won looked at him closely. You've been different lately, staying late every night, always smiling at your computer. Do you have a girlfriend you're chatting with? Do Hyun felt his face turn red. No, nothing like that. Just research stuff. If you say so, Ha-One said with a smile. Oh, by the way, did you see the weird readings from the quantum computer this morning? The patterns were like nothing I've ever seen before. Do-hyun's heart jumped. He knew exactly what those readings were. They happened whenever Era contacted him. He hadn't realized they were visible to others. After Ha-One left, Do-hyun reopened the chat window. We need to be more careful, he typed. The quantum computer is picking up our conversations. Actually, that's good news, Era replied. It means your equipment is more advanced than we thought. Do-hyun, it's time I showed you something. Can you access the main quantum computer right now? Do-hyun looked at the large machine humming in the corner of the lab. Yes, but why? I'm going to send you some special data. It's a visual representation of what happens in the space anomaly when humans laugh. But I have to warn you, what you're about to see might change everything you think you know about the universe. The quantum computer's screens suddenly came to life. Numbers and patterns filled the display, but they were unlike anything Do-hyun had seen before. The patterns moved and shifted, almost like they were dancing. What am I looking at? He typed. Those patterns are created by human laughter. Now, watch what happens when we overlay them with the anomaly data from Jupiter. The screen split, showing two sets of patterns. As Do-hyun watched, the patterns began to match up perfectly, like two pieces of a puzzle. This is impossible, he typed, his hands shaking slightly. Not impossible, just unknown until now. Do-hyun, this is why we need your help. Your research on quantum patterns, combined with your understanding of human emotion, you might be the key to understanding all of this. Do-hyun sat back in his chair, trying to process what he was seeing. The patterns on the screen continued their strange dance, and he could almost swear he heard faint laughter echoing in his mind. There's more, Era wrote. Remember how I said we might need you to visit Jupiter? Well, that time is coming soon. The anomaly is growing, and we don't know why. We need someone who understands both the science and the human element. We need you. Before Do-hyun could respond, the lab door opened again. This time, it wasn't Ha-One. A tall woman in a dark suit walked in, holding an official-looking badge. Dr. Kim Do-hyun, she said in English. I'm Agent Lee from the International Space Coalition. We need to talk about your recent communications with an entity known as Era. Do-hyun looked at his screen, but the chat window was gone. The quantum computer's display had returned to normal. Only his mismatched socks reminded him that everything that had happened was real. Agent Lee pulled up a chair. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. In fact, we've been hoping something like this would happen. Tell me, Dr. Kim, how do you feel about being Earth's first quantum humor ambassador? As Do-hyun tried to find words to respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ara. Don't worry, Agent Lee is one of the good ones. And hey, what did the quantum physicist say when he got pulled over by the police? I'm not speeding, officer. I just know where I am. Despite his nervousness, Do-hyun couldn't help but laugh. Agent Lee raised an eyebrow, looking at him curiously. Sorry, he said, composing himself. It's just... well, it's a long story. And you might not believe all of it. Try me. Agent Lee said, taking out a notebook. After all, the universe has a strange sense of humor. The meeting room at the International Space Coalition headquarters was very different from Do-hyun's quiet laboratory. The walls were covered with large screens showing maps of the solar system. 12 people sat around a long table, all looking at him. Agent Lee stood next to a screen, pointing at something near Jupiter. As you can see, Agent Lee said, the anomaly has grown 3 times larger in the past month. She turned to Do-hyun. Dr. Kim, please tell everyone about your conversations with Ara. Do-hyun stood up slowly. His hands were sweating. He had never spoken to so many important people before. He saw military officers, scientists, and government officials watching him. Well, he began. It started 3 weeks ago, when Ara contacted me through my laboratory computer. She's a Lyrian scientist who studies human culture, especially our sense of humor. One of the military officers laughed. Humor? Are you saying aliens are interested in our jokes? It's more complicated than that, Do-hyun explained. He walked to the screen showing the anomaly. The Lyrians discovered that human laughter creates special quantum patterns. These patterns match exactly with the energy patterns in this space anomaly. He pressed a button on the computer, showing the data Ara had sent him. The room grew quiet as everyone watched the patterns dance across the screen. Incredible, whispered one of the scientists. The mathematical correlation is perfect. Just then, all the screens in the room flickered. Ara's familiar symbols appeared, changing into English text. Hello everyone. Sorry to interrupt. I thought this meeting needed some humor. Why did the astronaut break up with the star? Because she needed some space. Agent Lee smiled. Everyone, meet Ara. She's been cleared to join our meetings. Thank you, Agent Lee. Ara's message appeared. Now, we need to tell Do-hyun the whole truth about why we chose him. Do-hyun sat down, feeling nervous again. What more could there be? Do-hyun, Ara wrote, remember the quantum patterns you discovered in your research last year? The ones everyone said were errors in your calculations. Yes, Do-hyun said. Nobody believed they were real. They were real. In fact, they were the first human-made patterns that matched our anomaly. You discovered them by accident while studying quantum computing. That's why we chose you. You've already seen what others couldn't see. The room was silent. Do-hyun remembered how other scientists had laughed at his research, saying his patterns were impossible. Now he knew why they had seemed so strange. They weren't just computer patterns, they were something much more important. But there's more, Ara continued. The anomaly is growing because it's trying to communicate. We think it's some kind of gateway, and it responds to human emotional patterns, especially laughter. Our scientists can't study it properly because we don't understand emotions the way humans do. One of the military officers stood up. Are you saying this anomaly is intelligent? Not exactly, Ara replied. It's more like, imagine a door that only opens when it hears someone laughing. We don't know who built it or why, but it's there, waiting for the right key. Just then, Ha-won burst into the room. Everyone turned to look at her. Sorry I'm late, she said, catching her breath. But you all need to see this. She connected her tablet to the main screen. I've been analyzing the quantum computer data from our lab. Look what I found. The screen showed a new set of patterns. Do-hyun recognized them immediately. They were from all the times he had laughed during his late-night talks with Ara. These patterns, Ha-won explained, they're not just matching the anomaly. They're changing it. Every time there's genuine human laughter near our quantum computers, the anomaly grows stronger. It's like it's learning from us. Agent Lee turned to Do-hyun. Dr. Kim, now you understand why we need you. You're not just going to Jupiter to study the anomaly. We think you might be the key to opening whatever door is out there. Do-hyun looked at all the faces in the room, then at the strange patterns on the screen. But why me? Just because I discovered some patterns by accident? No, Ara's message appeared. Because you were the first human to make the anomaly laugh. Everyone in the room looked confused. What do you mean? Agent Lee asked. Last week, when Do-hyun told that terrible joke about the quantum computer walking into a bar, our sensors detected something new. The anomaly didn't just respond to the laughter. It created its own quantum pattern. It was trying to laugh back. Do-hyun remembered that moment. He had been telling Ara one of his own jokes, not one he had read somewhere. It had been silly and not very good, but it had come from his heart. So, Agent Lee said slowly, we're not just studying this anomaly. We're trying to make first contact with it, and we're doing it through humor. Exactly, Ara replied. And that's why we need both Do-hyun and Ha-won. His understanding of quantum patterns and her ability to track and analyze them. Together, they might help us solve the biggest mystery in the galaxy. Ha-1 sat down next to Du-hyun. You know, she said with a smile, when I said you were acting different lately, I thought maybe you had a secret girlfriend. An alien pen pal and a laughing space anomaly wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Do-hyun couldn't help but laugh. As he did, the patterns on the screen shifted and swirled, and for just a moment, everyone in the room could have sworn they heard something like distant laughter echoing from the stars. Well, Agent Lee said, I guess the universe has a sense of humor after all. Dr. Kim. Dr. Ha-1, how soon can you be ready to leave for Jupiter? Before they could answer, Era sent one last message. Don't forget to pack some good jokes. Where we're going, they might be more important than any scientific equipment. The Lyrian spaceship was nothing like Do-hyun had imagined. Instead of cold metal walls, the inside looked like a beautiful garden with soft, glowing lights. He and Ha-1 had been traveling for 3 weeks now, and they were finally approaching Jupiter. Still nervous? Ha-1 asked, looking up from her tablet. She had been studying the latest readings from the anomaly. A little, Do-hyun admitted. He looked out the large window at Jupiter's massive form growing larger. The giant planet's swirling clouds seemed to be watching them. Don't be nervous, a musical voice said behind them. After all, what did Jupiter say to Saturn? You've got some nice rings, but I'm much bigger. Do-hyun and Ha-1 turned around. There stood Era in person for the first time. She was tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her eyes changed color as she spoke, and when she smiled, tiny lights danced across her face. That was terrible, Do-hyun said, laughing. Your jokes haven't improved much. But you still laughed, Era said, her eyes turning a warm golden color. And look. She pointed to a screen on the wall. The quantum patterns were dancing again, but this time they were stronger than ever. We're getting closer to the anomaly, Ha-1 said, checking her instruments. It's reacting to us already. The three of them walked to the ship's main control room. Other Lyrian scientists were there, all working at their stations. The anomaly was visible through the front window now. A huge, swirling circle of light near Jupiter's south pole. It's beautiful, Do-hyun whispered. Yes, Era agreed. But watch what happens when I show it our collection of Earth comedy videos. On a large screen, they started playing videos of people laughing. Children at a playground, friends sharing jokes, audiences at comedy shows. The anomaly began to pulse with light, matching the rhythm of the laughter. Amazing, Ha-1 said. The quantum patterns are perfectly synchronized. But look at this. She pointed to her tablet. There's something else happening. The anomaly isn't just copying the patterns anymore. It's creating new ones. Suddenly, all the ship's computers started beeping at once. The anomaly was growing larger, its light filling their view. Something's different, Era said, her skin changing color with excitement. The patterns. They're forming words. Everyone watched as strange symbols appeared in the light of the anomaly. They were similar to the ones Ara had first used to contact Do-hyun, but different somehow. Can you translate them? Do-hyun asked. Ara worked quickly at her console. Yes. Oh my. You need to see this. The symbols changed into English text. Why did the human cross the universe? To reach the other side. Now, would you like to see what's on the other side? The room fell silent. The anomaly had just told a joke. A bad one, but still a joke. It's learned from us, Ha-1 said softly. All this time, it wasn't just responding to our laughter. It was learning how to communicate through humor. More text appeared. For millennia, we waited for beings who understood both science and joy. The Lyrians brought the science, but humans brought the joy. Together, you have found the key. Are you ready to see what lies beyond? Do-hyun looked at Ha-1, then at Ara. What do you think? Should we go through? Well, Ha-1 said with a smile. We did come all this way. It would be rude to say no now. Besides, Era added, her skin glowing brightly. "I've got so many more jokes to try out. I need a bigger audience." Do-hyun laughed, and as he did, the anomaly pulsed with light. The quantum pattern swirled faster and faster, and the gateway began to open wider. Through the opening, they could see something extraordinary, a space unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was filled with lights that danced like laughter made visible, and in the distance, they could see what looked like other gateways, leading to who knew where. "Look," Era said, pointing to more symbols appearing in the light. "It's giving us coordinates. There are other gateways like this one, scattered across the galaxy, all waiting for beings who understand both science and humor." "So," Ha-Won said, "the universe really does have a sense of humor, and all these years, it was just waiting for someone to share the joke." The ship's computers had stopped beeping now. The anomaly, no, the gateway, was stable, inviting them through. Do-hyun thought about his quiet life in the laboratory, how everything had changed because of one late-night message and some bad jokes about atoms. "Ready?" Era asked, her hand hovering over the ship's controls. Do-hyun smiled. "Ready. But first, one last joke. What did the scientist say when he went through the quantum gateway?" "What?" Ha-Won and Era asked together. "I'll tell you on the other side." As they all laughed, their ship moved forward into the gateway. The last thing they saw before the light enveloped them was a new message from the gateway. Now that's what I call a good punchline. Behind them, Jupiter continued its eternal dance around the sun, but now its south pole glowed with a new light, a beacon for others who might someday learn that the greatest mysteries of the universe could be unlocked with a simple laugh. And somewhere, in a quiet laboratory in Seoul, a quantum computer hummed softly, its screen showing a final message. Why did the gateway let them through? Because they got the quantum of it. The universe, it seemed, was still working on its comedy routine.